On Battle of the Ports this week, we are looking at Nichibutsu's 1980 arcade shooter, Moon Cresta. The player begins the game with a small spaceship armed with a single laser cannon, which is pretty useless. Not to worry though, you can get a twin shot once you die, as the second form of your three-form ship becomes available. Basically, the three forms act as lives. After successfully completing the first 4 waves of alien attacks, the player must attempt to dock the ship with the previous section of the ship. However, failure to correctly align the sections causes the destruction of the section being docked with. Moon Cresta isn't a very long game, with only 8 different enemy waves. As was normal with games of this age, the game just loops and loops until all lives are lost. In 1985, we got the first 2 ports, starting with the Commodore 64 version, developed by Incentive Software. This isn't a bad attempt at first glance, but after you start playing you realise that the enemy patterns are nothing like the arcade version, plus it has some serious issues, such as the meteorites coming at you at the speed of light, or that the screen feels cramped at times. Not a bad effort, but I'm sure the home ports can get better. Also in 1985, and also by Incentive Software, we got the ZX Spectrum version. In fact, Incentive Software did all the home micro ports. This one is a little better than the C64 in that you get more screen real estate to play with, or at least it seems that way. The meteors no longer come at you at the speed of light, but the missiles do. Also, the game is constantly farting. Again, not bad, but could have been a little better. Amstrad CPC version next, coming out sometime in 1986. Now this is more like it. We get a proper arcade-like aspect ratio, arcade-like sound, but sadly not arcade-like gameplay. The Amstrad CPC version suffers from the same issue as the Commodore 64, in whereby enemies don't fit on the screen correctly, making them move off screen in areas where they would be on screen in the arcade version. Still, again, not a bad effort. Even the BBC Micro got a port, but this isn't the most obscure version. There are a few points to like about this version, such as the detail on the player's spacecraft and the colourful enemies. but sadly the BBC version is flawed due to really shitty collision detection. The amount of times I died when I wasn't even touched by an enemy is amazing. Again, close, but not perfect. The last 8-bit port to see a release in 1986 was for the Dragon 32. Sadly, my copy doesn't work. Many years passed until Denpa developed a port for the Sharp X68000 in 1992. As to be expected, this looks just like the arcade game, but seems to suffer from slowdown. Now, I'm not sure if this is an emulation issue, but that does seem unlikely since the X68000 emulation isn't known for poor emulation speed. If this slowdown isn't emulator related, then this is a surprisingly poor showing from Micomsoft. A few more years passed until 1995 rolled around with this Super Famicom port from Nihon Busan. This is actually part of the Nichibutsu Arcade Classics set, which also includes Crazy Climber and Frisky Tom. The port of Moon Cresta is stretched to fill a 4:3 aspect ratio, but on the plus side there are two graphical modes, arcade and arranged. The arcade version is very good, representing the arcade game, while the arranged version gives a very goofy looking spaceship but better looking enemies, and a moon that scrolls past in the background every now and then. Overall, this is a pretty good port. Also in 1995, Nihon Busan released the Nichibutsu Arcade Classics onto the PlayStation, which features all the games from the Super Famicom collection plus a few more. Sadly, the port of Moon Cresta does not contain any arranged mode, but at least it is in the correct aspect ratio. Besides that, this is a very basic but accurate port. And let's take a look at all those versions of Moon Cresta running side by side.